and put it on port 1 of switch 1. I'm going to take fast Ethernet 01 and switch to port 1. Back over here, take that off. Now, to turn the router on, just like VMware, I select the router. So up here I hit the play button. Or I can right click on the router and hit the start button. Does the same thing. Alright. Now one thing I like to do here is, although I don't know how well I'm going to do it with Windows 8, Task Manager. I actually like to look at what my CPU utilization is. And you see I have this thing called Dynamips down here. 32%, 31%. Everybody see that? Alright. Now, I'm running a Core i7. I got 6 cores on this bad boy. Alright? And I got 8 gigs of RAM. Okay, and my fan hasn't even turned on yet. By the time I get up to 3 and 4 routers on it, I haven't played around with it too much on this machine, but usually the fan kicks on, it sounds like a jet engine is flying around the room, and, you know, I hope my, cores aren't going to melt. It can be very, very, very processor intensive. One of the things that you can do is you can set an idle PC hex to where it will squelch the idle CPU processes. How you do that is you come to your router, you right click it. You have an idle PC program right there. You click on that idle PC. It will computate the values of those idle processes, and it will give you a drop-down box. Now, you want to look for the potentially better idle PC values that are marked with an asterisk. All right, it gives you one. Now, you may have to do this 1, 2, 5 times before you get an asterisk. You might have to repeat that process. That's okay. If you can't get it to work with that, and what I suggest that you do is maybe take a couple of extra steps before you do this and get on the command line and do a few commands so that the idle PC computation, it'll change and it'll give you a better value. Okay, so you may have to do it a couple times. So if you don't get an asterisk the first time you do it, don't freak out. Do it a couple more times. I've seen students that had to do this like 5, 7 times before they got one with an asterisk. Click on it, click OK. All right, now, look at there. Magic, right? 32-0. All right? Please, 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 please do this. Okay? Especially for routers. You're not going to be able to do it for the ASA. You cannot do this for the ASA. At least, not that I know of. Maybe in this newer version of GNSR you can, but from what I remember, you couldn't do it. The ASA, I typically only have you run one ASA because it is very, very, very CPU intensive. It's like running another virtual machine. All right. Once you're done with that, I'm just going to close my Task Manager real quick. All right. Now I can console to the box, and I'm going to turn. This is where I have to actually show you what this actually looks like in real life. Okay. So here I have a USB to serial connector and an RS-232 rollover cable. Okay, serial connector, 9-pin USB. Okay, plugs into my computer. And I have this handy dandy RS-232 rollover cable. These come with every ASA, router, switch, access point, you name it. If it's built by Cisco, you'll get one of these. Trust me, I have like a ton in the telecom lab. I have a ton at BDL. I have like a whole box full at home. It's it's ridiculous. You go out on a deployment as an engineer, and these things, you typically, after the first couple deployments, you start throwing them in the trash. All right? So, and I tell everybody, like, no, don't throw them in the trash, give them to me, I'll give them to students. Okay? So, connect that in, throw this on the USB port. Now, depending upon what operating system you're using, you may have to download a specific driver for your USB to serial converter. You can buy these at Fry's. You can buy them online at Newegg. You can buy them on Amazon. What I highly suggest is if you buy one, if you're going to use the equipment in the lab, we don't have very many of those in the lab actually because they grow legs because of classes like this. So I suggest that you buy one yourself. They're about $8, $12. They're not that expensive. Okay? You can go on to Newegg and just look up USB to serial adapter. Okay? A lot of times, wherever you're working and wherever the equipment is racked, it's not really going to be within like 5-6 feet. So what I also suggest you get is a barrel connector, an RJ45 to RJ45 barrel connector, and a decently linked patch cable. Then all you have to do, hook your barrel connector up, and you have to worry about stuff getting disconnected or yanked or clotheslined or whatever. Okay? Then on whatever device, router device, you're going to plug into the console port. It is the port that is baby blue, just like your cable. Funny story behind this. Back in 1995, 96, the United States Marine Corps was moving to using Cisco routers within their entire data structure and their entire network structure. They were getting rid of all their AS400 mainframes, and they were going to Cisco routers, not Cisco switches, because Cisco really hadn't developed a lot of switches at that time, Cisco routers. And you had cables, RS-232 cables, that could connect to the console port or to a modem. You could connect the aux port to a modem for what we call a reverse telnet connection. Well, Marines being Marines, they could not figure out what to plug into what port. And Cisco got inundated. This is when TAC was really small. It only used to be in San Jose, San Francisco at that time. They got inundated, flooded with calls. Right? So, they had a meeting of the minds in Quantico, Virginia, and Cisco basically came to the Marines and said, how do we alleviate all these calls that are happening? He goes, oh, you got to color code everything. You got to make it simple, stupid for Marines, man. So, hence, blue cable, blue port. You can't ever get it wrong. True story. Okay, so in plugging into the console port, power it on. And I don't know if this is actually going to work because I don't know if this router actually has iOS on it or an image on it, so I might strike out. Then you need to have some sort of terminal emulation program. Okay, I have PuTTY. PuTTY's really easy. You can Google it and download it really fast. And when you set up PuTTY, PuTTY's a terminal emulation software. I'm going to do the connection type as serial. Again, this is if you're actually using physical equipment. Physical equipment. Power on the device. Got power. And you click open. Okay. This is why I use TerraTerm. TerraTerm will automatically, it's on COM3. It'll automatically detect it. Again, you can Google TerraTerm, download it, and it'll connect. So this is saying, and this router does not have a software image on it, but this is how you would connect into the console port of a router or firewall or switch. Okay, RS-232 cable, adapter, and some sort of terminal emulation software. In this case, I'm using TerraTerm. You can also use PuTTY. Those are your two most common types that are used in Windows. In Linux, it's typically Screen. There's a couple of other different types of emulators that you can use as well. All right. In GNS3, since we're using a virtual router, if I right-click and I click console, it's just like I did that entire process here. The cabling, the hooking up, the powering on, getting my CON port set, everything. All right? And after the router boots up, okay, it goes through an entire boot sequence, it loads the software, it'll come to a prompt. And typically that prompt, we're going to look like that. Right? Greater than sign. Greater than sign. Okay? And from here, you can start your lab work. Okay, in configuring your environment, configuring your interfaces, configuring your routing protocols, what have you. All right. A couple of other resources to give you tonight. Okay. If you Google Cisco iOS Primer, second one there is an e-learning tutorial. It goes through, and the third one using the Cisco iOS command line interface. It's from Cisco.com. It's a basics PDF. Okay. It goes through some simple what modes are what, user exec privilege, global configuration mode, interface configuration mode, sub-interface configuration mode, and ROM monitor mode. This is the basics of iOS. Okay, it's a good refresher for those of you who haven't had 307 in 6 months, 9 months, over a year, etc. Okay, Cisco iOS Primer, third link if you Google it. Okay, I would highly suggest you go through that and reacquaint yourself with the command structure. I will work on getting the Cisco Net Academy site up. I have a ticket in with Cisco for that. I will cover Chapter 1 on Thursday, along with a little bit more for Lab 1 on Thursday. The usual lectures for this are about anywhere from 50 to 100 slides. I will try not to kill you by PowerPoint, I promise. All right, this one in this case is 132 slides. Yeah, well, Chapter 1's pretty lengthy here. But we're going to go over this on Thursday again. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of securing the network, viruses, worms, trojans. Attack methodologies, which is really going to come in handy for you guys in 471. I'm going to skip over what I call the quote Cisco Kool-Aid unquote. Okay, and try to make this a little bit more agnostic from a vendor perspective. Right? Yes, we're a Cisco Academy. Yes, we're a VMware Academy. Yes, we're a Juniper Academy. Yes, we're a Microsoft Academy. All right, we just kind of, I don't know, sell ourselves out there to whoever's going to throw money at the university, I guess. Whatever. All right. If you learn Cisco, great. It'll set you up and you'll understand. It'll be easier to learn Juniper next. If you learn Juniper first, that's okay. When you learn Cisco, it'll be a little bit easier. You'll understand the fundamental concept. Okay? All of these platforms